This is the Music History In-Depth podcast for December 11th through the 17th. On this week's show, we discuss the mystery surrounding Sam Cooke's death, the strange and scary case of Justin Bieber and three men, and we say happy birthday to three people, two of them legends and one who's definitely making a case for becoming one. In the late 1950s through the early 1960s, Sam Cooke was the king of soul music. He actually started out singing gospel music like a lot of people who eventually sang soul music. Starting in 1957 with You Send Me and going through 1964, Sam Cooke racked up hit after hit. What made Sam even more special was that he wrote all of his songs instead of relying on a songwriting team like, say, virtually anybody over at Motown. On the evening of December 11th, 1964, Sam checked into the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles, California. He did not leave the motel alive. According to the testimony of motel manager Bertha Franklin, Cooke attempted to rape his companion, Alyssa Boyer, who he took to the motel that night. Once Boyer escaped the attempted rape, she ran to get the manager. Once Cooke realized that Boyer had escaped, he ran down to the manager's office, demanding to know where Boyer was hiding. Cooke then attacked Franklin, who shot him 3 times. Franklin was later acquitted on murder charges, and the case was ruled as being a justifiable homicide. There has been some doubt, of course, thrown at that story since then. Some people believe that Boyer went to the motel willingly and actually robbed Cooke and then fled, which was why Cooke was so enraged at the time. Boyer had been arrested for prostitution, so I guess that little racket was not exactly out of the realm of possibility. Still, others think that Cooke's manager orchestrated the killing, since all copyrights to Cooke's songs went to his manager's company. However, since both of those possibilities were outside the initial scope of the investigation, they were never ever pursued. What is interesting about all of this is that the nature of his death seems to have been forgotten, while his legacy of being one of the most important voices in the history of soul music continues to this day. I'm not sure if that would be the case in today's toxic media and social media environment. After all, nobody thinks about O.J. Simpson and thinks, wow, what a great running back. And I highly doubt that anybody will ever use the words Kevin Spacey and great actor again without adding a few other choice words. The murder of soul great Sam Cooke at the Hacienda Motel on December 11th, 1964. And now, the strange and extremely scary case of Justin Bieber and the three men, which sounds like a fairy tale, except it's far from being one. Once upon a time, there was an inmate named Dana Martin. Dana was serving 2 life sentences for killing a 15-year-old girl in Vermont. Dana had a bit of a fixation on Justin Bieber. He even went so far as to get a tattoo of Bieber on his leg. Dana wrote to Bieber constantly, but became very angry when Justin would never write him back. Dana decided that something had to be done to teach Justin a lesson. He decided to hatch a plot and got his fellow inmate, Mark Aaron Sock, to help out a little. Since Martin wasn't going to be getting out of jail anytime soon, and Sark was the one who was going to carry out the plan. The plan was for Sark to tie up a couple of loose ends of Martin's in Vermont, quite literally. Sark was to kill 2 people in Vermont using a paisley tie, then go to New York City where Bieber had a concert at Madison Square Garden, and there Sark was going to kill Bieber and his bodyguard. And in all the killings, everyone was to be castrated. In return, Sark was supposed to get $2,500 per testicle plus a Vermont farm. You know, I'm not really quite sure about a few things on this. I mean, it's all true. I wish that it wasn't, but it's all true. But still, only $2,500 for a testicle? Jeez, You would think the price would be up a lot higher. That's $5,000 per body. That's not really a lot of money. Plus, what in the world does a Vermont farm have to do with any of this? But, like I said, it happened. Look it up. It actually happened. In any event, the castration part had Sark feeling a little squeamish, you think. So Sark got his nephew, Tanner Ruan, in on the deal. Once Sark was released from jail, he grabbed Ruan and off they went towards Vermont. The plan was going pretty well. Okay, and actually, the driving towards Vermont was going pretty well. At least they were going in the right direction. Until they missed the exit that they were supposed to take and instead ended up at a checkpoint on the Canadian border. And it was there that Border Patrol agents discovered a warrant for Sark on an outstanding probation violation, and so they arrested him. They let his nephew Ruan go because, he didn't have any on him. Literally not a charge. But, see, like all good lackeys, Ruan went and called his boss Martin, where he was still in jail, where they record and listen to all of your conversations. A very quick investigation happened, and on December 13th, 2013, the entire plot unraveled and everybody involved were charged. About a year later, Martin gave an interview to Details magazine. During the interview, he said that the reason why he put the whole plot together in the first place was because he wanted to be remembered. He also claimed that he still had assassins out to get Bieber, but that he would call off the assassins if Bieber would meet with him face to face. Yeah. Such is the scary, scary cost of fame. So the next time you read or hear about celebrities getting warrants to keep stalkers and other fans away, don't dismiss it and don't laugh at it or say that, see, this is what happens when you become famous and that you should just accept it and expect it. It is not even remotely close to being a joke because people are dangerous these days. The unraveling of the plot to kidnap, kill, and castrate Justin Bieber on December 13th, 2013. Before we go any further, we'd like to tell you about our other podcasts. The Music History Today podcast goes over the daily events in music history and drops daily, including weekends, on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. There's also the Music Halls of Fame podcast, which talks about a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, along with other Music Halls of Fame's museums and walks of fame. The Music Halls of Fame podcast drops every Thursday and can also be found on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to this podcast. In 1976, movie and music producer Robert Stigwood was looking for his next big hit. He had just come off of making two very successful movie musicals, Jesus Christ Superstar and The Who's Tommy. An article in New York Magazine caught his attention. It was titled The Tribal Rights of the New Saturday Night by Nick Cohen. The article told the story about a guy named Vinny and his buddies who were dancers in a discotheque in Brooklyn and who always dreamed of something bigger. Stigwood was hooked on the story and decided to turn the article into a movie. Vinny became Tony Manero. Stigwood got one of his old groups from his music producing days to do music for the movie, then grabbed an up-and-coming actor from a television show and released the movie. The movie, Saturday Night Fever, held its premiere at Mann's Chinese Theater on December 14, 1977 in Los Angeles, and was put into wide release into movie theaters on December 16, 1977, and then became one of the biggest movies of the year. It turned the disco music genre into a global sensation, the soundtrack into one of the biggest selling movie soundtracks of all time, the music group on the soundtrack, the Bee Gees, into one of the biggest groups of all time, and the actor, John Travolta, into an international superstar, along with getting him an Academy Award nomination for playing Tony Manero. Now, this story would be pretty good right there, except, of course, that it is not the end of the story. In 1994, almost 18 years after the original magazine article came out, Nick Cohen fessed up. In an article in the Guardian newspaper, he admitted that he actually made up most of the article. See, he had just moved to New York City at that point in his life when he was hired to write the article, and he didn't actually know the neighborhood in Brooklyn well enough to know any of the guys there. The name of the discotheque, Odyssey 2000, was real, and Vinny and his friends were Italian, but that was all that was real about the article. In fact, Vinny was based on a guy Nick knew from his old English neighborhood back in the 1960s. So you see, John Travolta and the Bee Gees owe their superstardom partially to, well, the popular phrase these days is fake news, whose article appeared in the June 7th, 1976 issue of New York Magazine. Oh, also bonus trivia, because June 7th also plays very heavily in something else concerning John Travolta. On June 7th, 1972, the Broadway musical Grease premiered. When it was turned into a movie, Robert Stigwood was the producer again and grabbed the guy who he had made into a superstar, John Travolta, for that main role. And the 1-2 punch of Saturday Night Fever and Grease turned John Travolta into the hottest actor in the world. June 7th must be a pretty lucky day for Travolta. The premiere of one of the biggest music movies ever made, Saturday Night Fever, on December 14, 1977 at Mann's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, California, with its wide, countrywide release into movie theaters on December 16, 1977. Our next story has a neat little twist to it. First, 1986 was a big year for Run DMC, who released their groundbreaking album Raising Hell that year. The album was produced by Rick Rubin, who had a major role in one of the most important songs of all time. The album was almost done when they decided to do one more song to pique interest from their fans who liked the hard rock sounds of their previous albums, King of Rock and Rockbox. After some discussion, they fell upon the idea of doing Walk This Way by Aerosmith. Originally, they were going to sample the song, but Rick and Jam Master Jay wanted to redo the song completely. They put out the call to Aerosmith to gauge interest. At first, there really wasn't any. What has to be remembered is that in 1985, when they were putting together the song, no one liked Aerosmith. Known as the Toxic Twins at that point, Aerosmith's Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were looked at as part of a group whose heyday was in the 1970s and had a lot of drugs, alcohol, and other internal band issues. They were, at that point, pretty much done as a band, literally. Even with their careers in freefall, though, Steven and Joe didn't want to do the song because they hated hip-hop. To them, and a lot of other artists, honestly, hip-hop was taking their songs, using them without paying the artists, and making money off of them. Aerosmith would be correct in that. And the Toxic Twins wanted no part of it. Rick, though, convinced them to at least come down to the studio to work things out. Once they saw how Jam Master Jay could cut the record precisely where he wanted the beat to be at will on the turntables, they were fascinated, and then they wanted in on the collaboration. The music video itself also became iconic. The video unfolds with both acts on opposite sides of a wall. Then once Run DMC starts rapping loud to the beat, Steven breaks through the wall with a mic stand. Then everybody ends up on a concert stage together as a show of solidarity and breaking down the barriers of both the rock and hip-hop culture, which at that point were extremely separated. Rumor has it that Stephen couldn't break down the wall at first, but they actually left that part in the final cut. The song, the album, and the music video all became huge hits. It also gave Aerosmith their careers back as the band got back together and started putting out hit songs like Love in an Elevator, Dude Looks Like a Lady, Angel, Janie's Got a Gun, among many, many, many others. Here's the twist. The twist in this story is why Aerosmith named the song Walk This Way in the first place. The story goes that some of the guys in Aerosmith took a break from recording their album at the time, Toys in the Attic, to go see a movie, which premiered in movie theaters on December 15th, 1974. In the movie, there's a scene where Igor, played by Marty Feldman, tells Dr. Frankenstein, that's Frankenstein, played by the late great Gene Wilder, to walk this way, which Frankenstein does, mimicking Igor's walk. The movie was Mel Brooks's classic comedy, Young Frankenstein. The guys in Aerosmith laughed so hard during the scene that when they got back to the recording studio to finish up the song they were working on, they decided to name that song that they were working on after that scene. And that is where the song title Walk This Way came from, and the movie that the title is based on, Young Frankenstein, premiered on December 15th, 1974. This week there are 3 birthdays to highlight. This first one, we could actually just do an entire show on him, but we don't have that kind of time, and neither do you. Therefore, we're just going to keep this one short, but he's extremely important because he is considered one of the greatest vocalists of all time. He sold over 150 million albums. He was a singer, an actor, and a producer, and a record label owner at one point. He's won Grammys, an Oscar, and a Golden Globe. He was in The Manchurian Candidate, The Man with the Golden Arm, From Here to Eternity, for which he won an Academy Award, Ocean's 11, Robin and the Seven Hoods, Come Blow Your Horn, On the Town, Guys and Dolls, High Society, and Pal Joey. He was also the ringleader of the Rat Pack. He is known as The Voice, the chairman of the board, and Old Blue Eyes. He is Mr. Frank Sinatra, who was born on December 12th, 1915. This next person is one of the biggest selling artists of her generation. She's put out 11 albums, 4 of which were country albums. She's worth, as of 2024, according to Forbes magazine, $1.6 billion. That's billion with a B. And she has also been named one of Rolling Stone magazine's top 100 songwriters of all time, even if a lot of those songs involve ex-boyfriends. Kelsey better watch out and behave himself, just saying. Her fan base of Swifties rivals the Bayhive as far as their Fierce Devotion tour goes. Happy birthday to Swiftie, a.k.a. Taylor Swift, born December 13th, 1989. Also the name of one of her albums that won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. This last person is one of the most recognizable names in classical music. His Fifth Symphony is probably the most famous piece of classical music in the world. Towards the end of his career, he began to lose his hearing, yet continued to write music. In all, he wrote 9 symphonies, 32 piano sonatas, 16 string quartets, 5 piano concertos, a violin concerto, and an opera. He is Ludwig van Beethoven, born December 17th, 1770. And that is it for the Music History In-Depth podcast for December 11th through the 17th. Thank you very much for listening and or watching if you're on YouTube or Spotify.